Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority say they're ready to govern Gaza again.
Georgians continue to protest against a controversial foreign influence law as the country marks Independence Day. Thousands protest in Tel Aviv to demand the Israeli government do more to free the hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza.
The Prime Minister of the Palestinian Authority, Mohammed Mustafa, has called for a wave of other countries to recognise the state of Palestine. Mr Mustafa was in Brussels to meet with international partners, including EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell and Norway's Foreign Minister, who handed over the official papers for his country's recognition. He says the Palestinian Authority is preparing to be the government of all of the future state of Palestine, including Gaza.
The first priority is to support our people in Gaza. They need every support we can. And I think the best support we can all do for them is to speed up the ceasefire. Every day represents a major loss of human lives and properties and hope for our people.
Meanwhile, the Spanish Foreign Affairs Minister, José Manuel Albares, says his country won't be intimidated for recognising Palestine after Israel announced it would no longer allow Spanish NGOs work in the West Bank.
Spain has always been firm and will continue doing it in demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the entry of all necessary humanitarian aid into Gaza. And no one is going to intimidate us on keeping doing this.
EU Foreign Affairs Ministers are meeting in Brussels on Monday, where they'll discuss the growing catastrophic situation for civilians in Gaza and the need to respect international humanitarian law. The Foreign Affairs Ministers of Spain and Ireland will also speak to their counterparts about the reasons for their recognition of the Palestinian state as a way of breathing new life into the two-state solution. But as the Foreign Minister of Spain also said, they'll be calling on other EU countries to join them. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
Thousands of people have protested in Tel Aviv to demand the Israeli government do more to free the hostages being held by Hamas in Gaza. Protesters also called for the resignation of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and demanded new elections. Division among Israelis has been growing over how the government has handled the war against Hamas. Around half of the 250 hostages taken by Hamas have been freed, but Israel says around 100 are still being held in Gaza. Georgia's President and Prime Minister have exchanged criticisms over a foreign influence law as the country marked Independence Day. Georgians took part in events to commemorate 106 years since the country declared independence from the Russian Empire. But this year's celebration comes as tensions mount over the controversial legislation that critics view as a threat to democracy. In her speech, President Salome Zurabishvili said the fate of our country is in our hands.
როდესაც რუსეთის აჩრდილი თავს გვადგას ევროპასთან და ამერიკასთან პარტნიორობა და დაახლოება ჩვენი დამოუკიდებლობის, მშვიდობის, შენარჩუნების და გაძლიერების ჭეშმარიტი გზაა. ის ვინც ამ გზას საბოტაჟს უწყობს და აზიანებს, ის ფეხქვეშ თელავს ჩვენი ქვეყნის მშვიდობიან და უსაფრთხო მომავალს. თავისუფალი და დემოკრატიული სამყაროს სრულყოფილ წევრად ქცევის გზას.
But Prime Minister Irakli Kobahidze hit back, saying his government was guarding the sovereignty and independence of Georgia.
სწორედ ხალხისა და მის მიერ არჩეული ხელისუფლების ერთიანობამ და გონივრულმა ნაბიჯებმა მოგცა იმის შეასრულება, რომ ეგზისტენციური საფრთხეების და მრავალმხრივი ღალატის, მათ შორის საქართველოს პრეზიდენტის ღალატის მიუხედავად, გასული 2 წლის განმავლობაში ქვეყანაში მშვიდობა შეგვენარჩუნებინა.
The controversial legislation, which has sparked weeks of protests, was passed by Parliament earlier this month. It requires media and non-governmental organisations to register as pursuing the interests of a foreign power if they receive more than 20% of their budget from abroad. Protesters say it's anti-democratic and could derail the country's chances of joining the EU.
Georgian democracy is seriously dented because of the oligarchic state capture and increased Russian influence. And the primary reason why these people are standing in the streets is to regain our country back and to make Georgia's democratic trajectory intact.
Last week, the president vetoed the bill, calling it unacceptable. But the ruling Georgian Dream Party has a majority sufficient to override that veto and is widely expected to do so. At least 4 people have been injured in a knife attack on the metro in the eastern French city of Lyon. The attack took place at around 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. Police say a 27-year-old Moroccan man was arrested and taken into custody. The suspect was unknown to police but had been hospitalized several times for psychiatric issues and had been subject to an order to leave French territory since 2022.
The Popular Party launched its election campaign in Madrid with a show of strength. Thousands of people gathered at the Puerta de Alcalá to show their discontent of the amnesty law, expected to be approved in Congress this Thursday.
Hemos venido a reivindicar la igualdad de todos los españoles, la primacía de la Constitución.
The leader of the Popular Party, Alberto Núñez Feijóo, took the opportunity to call for an early general election.
Ya que esta legislatura está perdida, ya que este gobierno tiene el país parado y no sirve de nada, que ponga punto y final.
Feijóo encouraged citizens to express their rejection and rebel against the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez's government at the polls.
Nos quieren siervos. El presidente del gobierno no es el amo de nada, es un servidor público.
The leader of the Popular Party presented the European elections as a referendum against Sánchez.
Alberto Núñez Feijóo, el líder del PP, mide sus fuerzas en la calle contra las políticas del presidente Pedro Sánchez, especialmente tras los recientes resultados electorales en Cataluña, que el presidente del gobierno considera una validación de su estrategia hacia el soberanismo. Los populares esperan que en estas elecciones los españoles envíen un claro mensaje de que en el país se ha producido un cambio de ciclo. En Madrid, Jaime Velázquez, Euronews.
With only a few days left until the EU's next elections, debating the most pressing issues Europe is facing has never been as crucial as it is now. Economic policies, along with both digital and green transitions, top the agenda of the 14th edition of the State of the Union Conference. Speakers from around the world flock to Florence for the 2-day event to reflect on what has been achieved so far and what Europe should focus on in the next political term.
Many of these panels are dealing with the technical issues involved, but what unites them is the sense that there must be some vision for Europe's future, a vision that can bring Europeans together, because if Europeans are not united, not able to generate the kind of energy necessary to tackle these challenges, then no technical solution is going to be enough.
Among the lessons learned, experts including former Italian Prime Minister Enrico Letta warned that the call to competitiveness is something Europe cannot ignore. As part of that effort, continuing on the path of the Green Deal to make the EU economy more sustainable can be both an opportunity and a challenge.
We should be less worried because the Green Deal is much more than a Green Deal, and maybe some of the details might change because some politicians might prefer some aspects of the Green Deal, but I think the project will continue in the same direction that we started.
The need for European defence and the future of enlargement are some of the questions being triggered by the new geopolitical order caused by the war in Ukraine. But above all, more than anything, these elections are about defending European values and democracies and the fight against misinformation.
Espionage, disinformation, AI abuse and so on, they are targeting our trust. And they seek to decrease the trust of people in democratic system. It's dangerous. So I hope we will not have some dramatically bad lesson to be learned from these elections. But even if not, even if they will be more or less okay, with only some portion of manipulation, it's inevitable, we will have to do more in the future, because trust is the most valuable value we have.
Whether or not some of the proposals discussed here will be implemented greatly depends on what's going to happen after June the 9th. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in Florence.
Guten Tag, mein Name ist Peter Bernscherer. Ich würde mich als EU-Abgeordneter dafür einsetzen, dass alle Menschen dieselben Chancen auf Zugang zur Informationstechnologie haben. Ich bin der Gründer des Vereins PCs für alle. PCs für alle nimmt Computer als Spende entgegen, bereitet sie auf und gibt sie absolut kostenlos an armutsbetroffene Familien weiter. Unsere Überlegung ist, dass alle Menschen dieselben Chancen, Bildungschancen haben sollen und dass die unglaubliche Verschwendung von Potenzial verhindert werden soll, von Potenzial und Ressourcen verhindert werden soll.
If I'm re-elected as a member of the European Parliament, I want to continue to deepen the social dimension of the Union and to fight for a union of equality. The digital and the climate transition must be socially just, they must be fair, and this means that the human capital must remain front and center of the European project.